Today's conversation isn't just about business, it's about the heart behind it. The journey of being a mother, a visionary, and a woman who is on a mission to live out a life of purpose.
So I'm writing business plans on deadline all the time and dropping off at daycare, trying to figure out daycare, all the things. And my husband came home and kind of disappeared for a while. And, then I'm like calling him or whatever. And he says, well, Jill, I just need to decompress for a little bit. Yeah. I went ballistic. I was like, decompress. I was like, when do I get to decompress? Ever, helping him to understand, when he was working in a corporate job. And, it's like, oh, I'm going to get drinks with so-and-so after work, or I'm just going to stop by here after work, or I'm going to go to this happy hour after work. I'm like, well, wait a minute. So now you're cutting into the time that I would have to do my work because you're, staying out and not being able to take on some childcare responsibilities later on when now I would shift gears. I said, so be mindful that that's what you're doing, right? It's not like the stopping by somewhere for work. That has an impact on me differently.
Hey guys, you're listening to the Journey to Purpose podcast with Erica Lasan. The road to joy and purpose can feel unfamiliar, uncomfortable, and sometimes, because others don't always understand it, it can be isolating and lonely. For almost 30 years of my life, I identified myself through roles and titles that put pressure on me to perform, but often left me feeling empty and void of purpose. But things got real when I discovered I'd be gaining yet another new title, that of mommy. It was at that point of surrender that I chose joy. Now, as a corporate joy strategist, speaker, and executive coach, I help working women, mothers, and caregivers in transitional phases of life find joy, purpose, and healing in what's next. In this podcast, we dive deep into stories, lessons, and transparent conversations to uncover vision manifesting joy gems that are sure to help you rediscover, reconnect, and recommit to your purpose and identity in joy. One feel-good thing at a time. Hey. Thanks for tuning into another episode of the Journey to Purpose podcast with me, Erica Lasan. And I am so excited for today's conversation because today I'm sitting with someone who truly embodies what it means to lead with intention, serve with purpose, and lift as she climbs. I'm talking about none other than Jill Johnson, the powerhouse co-founder and CEO of IFEL. That is the Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership. IFEL is a national nonprofit on a mission to close the racial wealth gap by supporting diverse women and small business owners and building capital so they can create sustainable success. This episode actually means a lot for me on a personal level as well, because I met Jill a few years back when I was a part of the 14th cohort for Rutgers Business School's EPI program, which is the Entrepreneur Pioneers Initiative. Over the years, I've benefited greatly from Jill's gifts as a business coach and a mentor. So trust me when I say you want to grab a piece of paper and a pen so that you can get ready to take notes and catch all of the gems that she's going to be dropping in today's conversation. We're diving into legacy, leadership, marriage, and all the behind the scenes, and I mean all the behind the scenes of being a woman in business for women in business. So whether you're a working mother, an aspiring founder, or someone just trying to find joy in the midst of juggling it all, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Guys, this is like 3 years in the making. I would like to introduce to you Jill Johnson.
Hey. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to finally be doing this with you.
Oh my goodness. So am I. You may not really believe this, and you may not even know this, but literally, since the day I've met you, I have always wanted to know about your journey story. I have been so intrigued by you since the moment I laid eyes on you and you introduced yourself and you were like, I'm going to be your business coach. And I was like, okay, fabulous lady. Like, I don't know where we're going with this, but I think it's going to be great. And it did not prove to disappoint. I'm so grateful for you and your presence in my life and all the amazing things that have come as a result of our knowing each other.
Thank you so much, Erica. It's great to be here, and this has been a long time in the making. So I'm really excited to be here. And before we get started, I just have to say that you are one of the most joyful people that I know. And when I think of joy and hear that term, I think of you because you were the first person who I really heard, just like really lean into this concept of joy and talking about it and being intentional about it and living a life with joy. So thank you for all that you do to bring joy to so many people's lives and for, just keeping that conversation front and center. That means a lot and it takes a lot to do it.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't even know. I'm really grateful to hear that, especially coming from someone like you and you in particular, because you're one of the few people that I think has seen.
The toll it can take as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to look joyful and do the work that we all do each and every day. It is hard. It is
Yeah.
hard, you know.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is it's not even, like, the work itself because I love the work. I'm obsessed with the work. I just want everyone to be joyful. I want women to be joyful. I want mothers to be joyful. The impact of the work is generational in terms of healing, but it is the business side of this work that has
Mhm.
been such a, I want to say, a stretch for me. And I am someone who loves entrepreneurship. I love talking about business. I love building up entrepreneurs and women in business. But when it's come to my own personal journey of sharing this mission and amplifying it to the point where I can live off of it, it has been a journey. And you are one of the, I want to say, one of the few and first people that has not only encouraged me, but also validated the concept of this business to the point where I was able to take it from just an idea. And I almost want to say, I don't want to say a small vision because the vision that I have in mind is so, so big, but there were ideas that I had and a vision that was in my heart that I could not see. I couldn't see how to bring it to fruition, like realistically, because of the financial aspect of it. I'm gonna just keep it real. The vision was bigger than my wallet could handle, and in a lot of ways, it still is. So I'm like, Jehovah, be a gyra, be a provider. But also, I recognized that I needed to learn how to steward what I was bringing in and this business beyond the idea of just talking about joy. Realistically speaking, if I was going to make this business work, it needed to be producing income, it needed to be producing cash flow consistently, and it also needed to speak to the people who are willing and able to pay for the work. And the work that I did with you through the EPI program when we first connected just helped me understand the possibility of this in a whole new light. So I feel like this whole conversation is probably going to end up being like an hour of me just saying, "Thank you so much, Jill. I love you. Thank you for your work." But yeah, I really do want to thank you for validating the work, validating me as an entrepreneur, but also like seeing me in moments when I really needed to feel seen as an entrepreneur. So
Absolutely. One, that is what brings me joy, doing exactly that. There's so much potential that folks have out there. And oftentimes that potential gets put in a box or it's squashed and stamped out completely because they can't figure out how to get there. And I guess I had the good fortune of having parents who were entrepreneurs. They had a newspaper publishing business for 20 years or so. And so I saw the ins and outs of being a business owner. It looks glamorous on the outside, and there are many ways in which it is very glamorous. But there is then the nitty gritty work that has to get done and the bills that have to be paid and all the things that's not what you love about your business, right? And so it's all of that that can take a toll. It's all of that that can bring the stress and anxiety, but that's the real work of actually building a business. Again, I think that your message of finding joy in things is one that I've actually tried to incorporate into my work and how I operate and how I even, really advise others to operate as well is to enjoy the journey. And it's something my oldest son also has taken an entrepreneurial path. Um, and he talks all the time about, enjoying the journey, like trust in the process, enjoy the journey. And when I look at business owners, I will say to them, it's hard, of course. And actually, anything worth doing in life is hard. But if you see that end goal that you're trying to accomplish, enjoy the fact that you did one thing better than you did it before. Or as a business owner, the next time you made a hire, that hire was better than the first hire that didn't work out so well, or you were able to make a sale more easily, or you talk to someone and at first you would talk to people about your concept and they didn't get it. And then you talk to someone and it clicks. And then it's like, my gosh, okay, now what did I say? And let me say that again. And so it's trying to continue getting better at your craft as a business owner. It's not the thing that you're doing. A lot of times people have the expertise in that. It's really getting better as an actual business owner, as an entrepreneur. So, you know, um, I love doing the work. It's hard for me to, as you said, I am a wife, I'm a mother, I have 4 sons. I've learned a lot from those experiences. Um, I learned a lot from growing up, the daughter of entrepreneurs, and, you know, being kind of between my father, who has big vision, and my mom, who was the get it done. So I definitely have a bit of both of those. And then starting my career out of college in the financial analyst program at Goldman Sachs in mergers and acquisitions. And that was a whole nother world. That really also shaped my understanding of what's out there and what's possible when access to capital is not a barrier. So I've
Mhm.
taken all those different experiences and it all comes together for me in the Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership and the work that we do today. And it brings me joy that it is an organization that I'm working to build that really is part of my parents' legacy in opening doors for others, in helping people to understand and see the possibilities. My father would always say, believe in the power of possibility. Being successful as an entrepreneur is really hard and it's not guaranteed. However, no, it it should not be due to the fact that you have not historically had legacy, access to legacy wealth, that your opportunity to be successful is limited just because
Mm.
of that. There's too much capital, too many resources in the United States of America. And our objective is really, how do we open more doors for more people to be able to leverage all those resources and all the wealth to create wealth, income, jobs, everything for themselves, their families, and within their communities.
Oh, man. That is awesome. But you touched on a number of things, one of which being your background in the finance industry and how that shaped your ability to see capital and access to capital and finances, and how when they're removed, then it creates such freedom for people to really live out their missions and do good work. You also touched on the legacy of entrepreneurship that your parents have planted in you and your ability to carry it on, and also just the ability to live out this work joyfully, and how your work is also impacting your children. So I want to touch on all of those things, but before we hop into that, I almost want to backtrack a bit. My question is really like, where does your journey story begin?
Oh, so that's loaded and there's a lot there. No, I got to this very accidentally on one,
Mm.
and then there was a lot of intention on the other hand. So let me backtrack in my whole story that I have always been a person who was kind of like, why? Why not? Right? Why not? Why not? Why not? When my parents would tell me, I couldn't do something, well, why not? And There was always just wanting to understand what's the problem? What is the challenge here? And let's figure out how we can solve it. So I've been like that since I was a kid. And I recognize now fully that that's very difficult as a parent. And back then we were not in the age of parents, kind of negotiating and explaining everything. It was like, because I said so. And that was rarely a sufficient answer for me. So a
Okay.
lot of butting heads around that. Um, but I always was trying to figure out how to solve different issues and problems. Um, I will never forget, I was in high school and I was a student representative to the school board. And there was a program that came up for a vote, and they were voting on it. And I raised my hand and said, well, wait, that program isn't actually happening right now. It's not operational. Well, school board members didn't even realize this because they're not, in the school day to day. Needless to say, the person who was running that program had a bit of an issue with me going forward. However, it was speaking up to say, well, this isn't happening. I have always been also creating programs. When my parents had their newspaper publishing business, it started as Plainfield Today. Plainfield is where we grew up. And I created this thing called PT's Clubhouse. So it was for the kids' birthdays. So kids would write in and say, this is my birthday. And I would, I think, send a note or write something in the paper. And then I would draw these characters for the letters. I can't draw. I am not an artist. I don't draw at all. But, I figured out how to do that. And so, that was something like just, again, um, identifying a need. How do we engage young people? How do we engage children in the paper and want to get them to read? I created this PT's Clubhouse. So, solving problems has just always been a part of my DNA. Now, seeing that access to capital was a barrier for them, it has continued to be a barrier. How do we address it? So that's the foundation of the work that we do today.
What was your journey leaving corporate and coming into entrepreneurship? Was it something that you had always endeavored to do, or was it really just seeing your parents and understanding their plights, the work that took place in kind of building an entrepreneurial endeavor that was successful? Or was it something where you were like, I'm just going to try my hand at this? Because it would sound like the work that you were doing was a dream role, especially working for Goldman Sachs.
It wasn't necessarily this conscious decision to leave corporate. I
Mhm.
didn't know early on. I come from a family of there are three of us. I'm the oldest of three. I'm pretty meticulous when it comes to certain things, and I think um, yeah, I just have kind of a little bit of quirkiness where I like things to be even. And so I always felt like, five in the family was like an uneven number. And, if someone was like left out, if there was
Mhm.
a ride at the amusement park or something. And so I always envisioned having four kids. Like I always
Oh, wow.
said kind of, two or four, but I want four. Um, and so when I worked at Goldman Sachs, it was during a time when, we were working, gosh, it felt like 16, 18-hour days. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
office, 8, 9, and only that late because on the back end, it was unpredictable. Like I never got home before while it was still light outside. My second year working there, I lived with a roommate in New York, and I was a great roommate because I paid half of the rent and I was never there. And it was going home at, 1, 2 in the morning. And so there was that was a time there were not a lot of women partners. And I will never forget there was an analyst, there was kind of a town hall meeting, and an analyst asked the guy who was running the department at that time, is it possible for a woman to be a partner and have a family? And the response that I remember was, I don't know. Right.
Mm,
That was the honest truth. I mean, I would rather that someone say that, right? That was the honest truth, undetermined. And even
mhm.
today, when I see the earnings reports from Goldman and, the amount of money that everyone's getting, it's like, oh gosh, I am pretty clear that I would not have my four children, and they are absolutely the joy of my life. So, That for me was something that was very, very important. Fortunately, the analyst program is a defined period of time. It's generally 2 years. Some people will stay for a third year, then typically people will go to business school. I did.
Mm,
I decided to do a third year and I went to Chicago then, and that was a lot of fun, much different lifestyle, but it's an office of all men. And mostly men who played golf, and that's how they developed their relationships and things like that. I did not play golf. I had a much different lifestyle, but from a work perspective, I never really felt integrated into
mm,
the office and bonded with the folks that were there. There was one guy who I did a lot of work with. He was fantastic. And I could tell he was really making a very conscious effort to pull me in. And I think also that was at a time when I did not really understand as well how to integrate myself.
mm,
Many of us who kind of feel like, oh, I don't feel included. Yes, that's absolutely a thing. At the same time, I think now I would handle things a little bit differently to get
mhm,
myself included, right? And I would do things differently to get myself included. And also just being more confident about myself. I think back then I didn't necessarily have the same confidence to carry myself in the same way in the rooms in which I would exist at that time. And so, yeah, I just felt like I did not want to continue on that path. So it wasn't saying, oh, I got to get myself out of corporate. It was, I did not want to continue on that path. Now, in doing that, my parents are right there with their publication, right? And needing help and they needed, talent, all of that. Well, they had just paid for me going to Harvard. So why not take that talent and, apply it to their business? And so I went to work with them and I was running a publication that they had called Yes, Youth Excited About Success. And that was a magazine. So think like weekly reader, scholastic kind of thing,
mhm,
education, but really centering resources for and the stories of young people in urban school districts, to
mm.
help them really see the possibilities for themselves to get access to scholarship information and information about different programs. Remember, this was at a time when you couldn't just go online and search some things up. There was no Google. I mean, no one was using the internet back then. So publications was the way that people got access to information. And so when I started with my parents, it was like they had done some pilot publications. I think they were printing quarterly. And then when I came on board, we moved to publishing monthly. And I had to figure out how to get the publication, the distribution up and to get people paying for it. So we developed a model where we were selling into schools. So I would go and, at what, 25 or so, I'm going and talking to superintendents of school districts and principals and creating strategic partnerships and all of that. And in the schools, again, I saw what I felt was like a lack of motivation of students.
Mm.
I was going to schools all across the country and in some areas where it was pretty tough and at times seemed like students seemed a bit disinterested, but also in some cases where the teachers didn't seem very engaged with the students for, maybe a variety of reasons. And so I created this thing called Say Yes to Your Future. And it was a
Ooh.
national rally. I will never forget, like in Chicago, we did it, and they bussed students in to this venue where we had, and there had to have been thousands of students that were there
Oh.
from the entire district all over. And we had a music artist who performed, and then I was up there on stage. Yeah, say yes to your future. I mean, when I think my gosh, like what was I doing? But again, it was solving a problem. So for a long time, the better part of my life, I've been creating programs to solve a problem, operationalizing, like figuring out how do we actually address this problem that we're trying to solve? How do we put some sort of program in place and operationalize a solution to a problem?
Oh my gosh. this is the JOYrney story. Like, I feel like my mind is going in so many different directions because I'm like, this is where it all began.
It's
And
like
hearing the share.
continuation. I mean, when I look back, and it was really pretty recently that, I looked back and said, "Oh my gosh, I have actually been doing this kind of thing for like my
Your
entire
whole
life,
life.
solving problems, like
Yes.
putting together like some programming and, how do I do this? Okay, here's the problem. Now, step one, two, three, four, and like putting all the steps in place. One, creating a vision for how to solve the problem and then operationalizing it. So now I'm just doing that at a higher level and with higher stakes and trying to solve a problem that has, seemed persistent and intractable, and I'm kind of like, yep, this is my ultimate challenge. And I am just so dead set that we are going to crack this code of how we open more doors for more people, and that we systematize that, and that we change behavior in the people who have the ability to be that change.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Awesome. This episode of the Journey to Purpose podcast is sponsored by Irie Vibes Photo Booth, where celebration meets effortless memory making. Let's be real. You plan an event, lead at work, and care for everyone else. But by the end of the night, when you look back, how many photos do you actually have of yourself? None? Sound familiar? Trust me, I totally get it. That's where Irie Vibes Photo Booth comes in. They don't just take photos, they document joy, laughter, glow-up moments, milestones, and the moments that show the legacy that you're building right now. Perfect for corporate events, milestone celebrations, or women's retreats, Irie Vibes makes it easy to create memories that last and marketing assets you can actually use. No more boring stock photos, no more regret about missing the moment. With a small footprint, elegant design, and custom branded templates, Irie Vibes fits seamlessly into your space, capturing your personality, your celebration, and memories that you'll actually want to share. Serving Morris County, New Jersey, and surrounding areas, including Chatham, Summit, Madison, and New Providence. Are you ready to capture a vibe? An Irie vibe, that is. Make sure you visit journeytopurpose.com/photo booth to see how Irie Vibes can make your next celebration unforgettable. And make sure you snag their first time trial offer while you're there. And while spots last, because they're going fast. Your joy deserves to be felt, seen, and captured. Let Irie Vibes help you share it beyond the moment. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know that it probably felt like a lot to like go back and dig all the things, but I think that sometimes it's so easy for us to discount how the smaller quote unquote parts of our story actually lead to the bigger
Yeah.
part of what it is that we're doing when we prioritize purpose and living in it. You know, not just for the moment, but really making sure that whatever it is that you're doing as a part of your journey is really aligned with your lifestyle and your core values and your life's mission, because it's not just about showing up in purpose, it's about living a life of purpose. And when you're clear on what that means and what it looks like, that's when the whole thing becomes a joyous adventure and not a heavy lift. Even when the moments are hard and even when things don't feel perfect or completely right, or you're like, my nerves are being tried today. But we're gonna push on through. So hearing you share all of that is so nice to hear because I feel like it illuminates so much about and around what inspires you to do the work that you're doing. Like, not just the idea of like, I did the thing and I started the business, but one, how can we actually fund this so that it goes beyond you and it blesses your community? Because I think that sometimes that isn't always the first thought that comes to mind when some people start businesses. I don't know. Um, Actually, I do know because you also touched on another thing that I feel like I want to dig into a little bit, but the fact that you started off with considering the problem and solution. I'm going to be honest. When I first started my business, and I've been an entrepreneur since I was 13, that wasn't even a thought to me. So I almost want to highlight that part of what you've shared for anyone who may be considering entrepreneurship, who may be considering starting a business, who may be toying with the idea of utilizing their gifts to make money, but like beyond making money, I think it's really important to note the idea and the concept of recognizing how your gift actually solves a problem. Because it'll make it so much easier to then share the work, but also get people in line with recognizing the value of what's being done. And for the first, I want to say, if I'm being honest, maybe the first 15 years of my entrepreneurial journey, it was like that wasn't even an understanding. It wasn't a thought until one of my first coaching experiences. And it was at that moment that like a light bulb went off.
Right.
So I think it's beautiful that you recognize that one at such a young age, but that you are also able to put it to practice and actually put it to work in a way that did a lot of good for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of times people hear the narrative, do something that you love and make a business of it or something like that. And it's like, well, it's not a business if you can't make money from it, right? Now it can be a hobby that you love doing. It can be, a favorite pastime that you love doing and you just do it, right? But if
Mhm.
you do it as a business and if you're calling yourself an entrepreneur, then it is about making money. And people talk about, impact. Well, I would like to go back to, when you're in an airplane, they say, if the oxygen mask falls down, put on yours first and then put on someone else's. So I see a lot of folks trying, running around, oh, I want to have impact. I want to have impact, but they are drowning
Mm.
and they cannot stay afloat themselves. And that's very difficult, again, to be a business owner. And uh, you are not able to actually help anyone else, right? Because you're having difficulty even helping yourself. And so
Yeah.
fundamentally, again, I love marrying, what you love doing and solving a problem. And usually it's because you love doing something that you're able to see a problem that's within your universe. Um, and then you figure out how to monetize it. Now, it may not always be clear how you monetize your solution to the problem initially,
Mhm.
right? That may take a little bit of time. But what problem are you solving, for whom, and for what purpose? Right,
Yes.
that's always the thing. What problem are you solving, for whom, and for what purpose? And once you figure out what problem you're trying to solve, then you go and solve it and you test and you iterate and figure out how you're going to address it.
That's such a great point. And in hearing you share your journey story, I can see moments of your own journey story where that process that you're speaking of, like, it's not just something that you share as a part of the work that you do, but it's also something that you live. Starting out with your parents' magazine, The Weekly Reader, and then going to Yes, and then building the program. Like at each level of your journey, there was a new problem to solve that was actually maybe not even a new problem, but a subset or a deeper dive of the initial problem that you went in with, which I think is really cool to note. But also for those who are thinking about, well, I've tried this thing and it didn't work, or I started a business, but it didn't pop off. So then I started another one and I started another one and I started another one. It's something that I know that in the work that I've done with entrepreneurs, it's like, well, if you don't follow through with the thing, one, how are you ever going to get better at it? But two, who's to say that it was a failure? What have you learned from the experience? And how can you translate that experience into this new version of what you're doing? Or how can you take that information and that data, right? The feedback that you get from it, how you feel during the process, the words that your clients may or may not have left you. And that's the thing. Like, are you getting any surveys to actually understand what the issues were in having success? But recognizing that it only becomes failure when you quit. And I think there's also something to be said about, again, not just doing something for the love of money, but really doing it for the love of the craft and for the ability to help people, but doing it in a way that feels aligned with your joy and with who you are as a person. I think that in hearing your story, you are so uniquely purposed for this. And I'm not just saying that because I've heard your story today, but because I've also experienced the joy of your gift as someone who has been coached by you and the ability for you to see problems and extract what needs to be done, but also to see the person that's experiencing the challenge, hold space for the person that's experiencing the challenge, and then hold their hand as they walk through the fear that may be keeping them in a moment that could keep them from their success. Like your program said, what, say yes to your future, say yes to success, and being able to see a person and really understand, like, I see that this is so possible, but here is how you may need to engage with it in this moment and really walking them through that process. So I feel like I've said so much, but one, again, I want to say thank you, but two, for all of those, for anyone who's listening and who may be in a season of feeling like, well, I tried a thing and it didn't work, so I just keep trying new things. Stick with it and learn from it and see where the journey takes you, because each thing, each part of the journey builds on another part, because you've been doing this your whole life.
Yeah, I there's another part of this that sometimes you need to stick with it and give it a little bit of time. And there are other times we need to cut bait much sooner and say, this isn't,
Mhm.
and move on, right? And the market is buying this, then there's something I need to change or fix, or how I'm communicating what I'm doing, or maybe the product or service just isn't needed. Listen to what the market is telling you. And look, everyone wants to talk about there are no failures, you learn, but also get comfortable saying, yeah, this didn't work, it failed, and move on to the next thing. And oftentimes there's so many of us who are told you get one bite at the apple, you get one shot at this. You have to be better than everybody else, right? And that
Mm,
are indoctrinated with that, which that's been our history. But at the same time, it often does not give us the freedom to understand, fail, and move on. And it's better to
mm,
fail fast rather than continuing to pour resources into something that's not working when really the handwriting's on the wall. It's just not working, right? Other folks will do something, doesn't work, they move on to the next thing, they move on to the next thing. And then they're labeled as a, "Oh, this is a two-time founder." And now and they're raising money for this third venture, and they had the same investors as they did for the first two ventures that didn't work, right? And people will see them, the investors will say, "Well, they have this experience, they learned a lot, etcetera." Oftentimes, many of us don't we feel we don't have that luxury. And that has been our reality oftentimes. But you know what? We need to move through the world a little bit differently. And
mm,
that's what was saying before about, having the confidence to move in the world differently when you understand that that is how the world works and you see how the world works for others. Times we limit ourselves. And again, it's 100% based on our experiences and our history and everything. But if we keep moving through the world in that way, we are limiting ourselves. And so, this whole notion of failure, get comfortable with failing. Get comfortable. It's why we have to let our kids fail sometimes. We have to let them be okay with that and see that, hey, this didn't work out and you were okay. You're still
yeah,
breathing, move on to the next thing. And what is it from that thing that didn't work out? What are the lessons you're taking? What is it
yeah,
learning? It's a failure when you keep on making the same mistakes over and over
mhm,
and over and over, right? It's a learning. Yeah, the thing failed, but you learn from it and you move on to the next thing. And again, I think always figuring out, what problem am I solving? For
yeah.
whom and for what purpose? Because if no one needs your solution, they're not going to pay for it, right? And if you don't
Mhm.
have anyone to pay for it, then you don't really have a business.
In hearing you share that and talking about failure and learning from it, I'm really glad that you highlighted that point, because I do think that is one worth noting. And the ability to even rest in the process, to regroup and then consider how to move forward. Right? It may not be that you're a failure, and I say this because I've shared this on this podcast many times. There have been certain points in my entrepreneurial journey where I have felt like a failure, but it would only be after I would take a moment to, one, feel the feeling, right? sit with the feeling for a little bit, but then realize, oh, that wasn't a failed moment. Because over the years, I would say that part of the joy in the journey is recognizing how when you're committed to living a life of joy with purpose, you see the ways in which you have always been who you needed to be. It's just a matter of figuring out the right, this may sound weird, but the right packaging for your ability to be who you are, who you've always been destined to be, and in a way that can serve yourself, serve society, but also serve the generational impact. You know what I mean? And I think that just understanding that rest as a part of the process actually almost acts as a superpower and a catalyst for understanding how to transform that failure into an opportunity to reset, reprioritize, and then move further faster and with some strength involved in the process as well.
Absolutely. And I think also we really have to separate out being a failure and failing at something.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Right? Like
good.
those are two very different things. And
Mm,
people will fail at something and then internalize that as I'm a failure versus,
mhm.
hey, it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Just didn't work out.
Yeah.
You think about professions like someone who's a doctor, right?
Yeah.
Surgeon, right? They're operating on people every day. They might have someone who dies, right?
Mm,
Life and death in their hands. And they're not saying I'm a failure as a surgeon. I mean, it happens, right?
yeah.
That's part of it. And so as entrepreneurs, you're going to try some things that work and you're going to try things that don't work. And if you never come across things that don't work and you're not failing at anything, probably means you're not even pushing yourself enough. It means
Ooh,
push yourself more and take more risks because it likely means, again, you're leaving opportunity on the table because you're not pushing enough and thinking outside and acting outside of the box. So
mm,
I would challenge folks, try to rack up some failures. What things that you're doing and, trying. Again, you're not trying enough. You're not trying hard enough. Think of a baby when they learn how to walk, right? They don't stand up and then they fall down and they just stay on the ground. They get back up, they keep on walking, taking some more steps. That's how you learn how to walk.
yeah.
So business, same thing. You have to keep on getting back up, walking, you get stronger, you figure out how to do it differently the next time. The whole direction of where we are with Eiffel today is because there was a strategic partnership that we were moving down the path and then that fell apart very unceremoniously and it was a very bad situation that caused me a lot of internal turmoil and stress and all the things. And when I looked back on that after, we would not be where we are today as an organization. I would not be focused at a much higher level. When I look back and think of it, I would have been going down a path that was wasting not only my talents and problem solving ability, but would not have been serving the higher purpose that we have today of trying to
Mm,
work toward changing the system. Rather,
yeah.
we help a lot of business owners, and I love helping business owners. And as an organization, we love business owners benefiting from what we do day to day. But our real objective is to change the system so that
Mm,
there is a system that is more supportive of more people who historically have not felt very supported by the entrepreneurial ecosystem at large. That's vision. That's a higher purpose. And
yeah.
had that failed situation not happened, I'm not sure that we ever would have gotten there. So now I look back and I'm like, thank you. Like it
Yeah.
was freeing, liberating that, it pushed us to go in a different direction. Um, so I encourage people really, look at the silver lining in every single thing that happens. Just stop and think, what am I supposed to be learning from this? Take that learning, take that information, that knowledge and the experience and move on.
Yes. So good. Hey, friend, have you ever looked around and thought to yourself, I'm doing everything for everyone else, but somehow, some way, I've lost sight of myself? Trust me, I get it. Between work, motherhood, caregiving, and doing all the things, You are constantly moving, yet somehow, deep inside, something still feels a little off. You're not quite sure what it is. You just need space to breathe, space to reconnect, and space to rest and recalibrate your priorities as you rediscover yourself in this season with joy. And that is exactly why I created the JOYrney Daily Planner. It's not just a productivity tool. It is a faith-fueled reset that is designed with purpose-driven women like yourself in mind. Women who want more peace, more presence, and more alignment in every area of their daily lives. Inside, you'll find daily prompts rooted in scripture, weekly joy check-ins, room to reflect, realign, and get honest with what God's calling you to do in this season. Because your planner shouldn't help you just get more stuff done. It should help you become more of who you're meant to be. But even better than that, it should help you align yourself with what God's calling you to do. So, with all that being said, if you're ready to stop surviving and start thriving with a little bit of structure and a whole lot of grace, then the JOYrney Daily Planner is waiting for you. Head over to ericalasan.com/planner to grab your copy today and get ready to rest, reflect, and reconnect with joy, one feel-good thing at a time. I am enjoying this conversation so much. And I want to continue with these entrepreneurship questions, but we also have a ton of women who are listening who are mothers, wives, and busy women who are just trying to figure out, okay, but how do I balance life with all of this that we're talking about as it relates to building businesses, problem solving, creating solutions, while also prioritizing myself in the process, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship. From the outside looking in, and someone who's been following your journey for a couple of years now, you are a mother, you are a wife, and you are so community oriented. And from the outside looking in, it seems like you got it going on. Like you have all the things in their place and in a way where you are able to protect your energy, preserve your peace, and mindful of yourself in the process so that you don't grow weary doing the work. How do you do it? Or is it something that's being done? You let me know because I'm just an outsider looking in.
So I'm glad to know from the outside that it looks like, it's all together and, I'm just kind of moving through life and I got it all under control. I will say that that couldn't be further from the truth. A lot of times, I feel like I'm going a mile a minute off very often. And I have very recently been in a period of just constant travel. I've just been on and off of airplanes and all of that. And my preferred state is being home with my family. I love seeing new things, new places, meeting new people, but I don't love kind of the hustle and bustle of travel, and especially being away from the family and being away from my youngest son, who is navigating his senior year of high school and all of that. So, what I will say is again, I try to enjoy the journey. So out at places, I enjoy that when I am home at his basketball games or talking with any of my children about, what they're doing. Again, two of them, actually, I should say three of them, kind of have business ventures in which they are involved or leading. So, we talk about those things all the time. My husband's involved in something really exciting. So, I enjoy talking about those things and I enjoy doing the work that I do. So I try to be present in doing those things when I'm doing them. I don't find a lot of time for myself, which is why when I travel, I take time to walk. So I like walk all the time. I'll get up early in the morning. I might be on the West Coast and my son has to leave to go to school like 6:20 or so, 6:30 in the morning. And I will wake up to call him to try to, make sure I say good morning every morning. And again, I try to enjoy that process, right? Because you just don't have that for a long period of time as a mom. So whatever stage they are in, I try to enjoy that when it is. I don't have a ton of time for myself. So I have become more selective about the things that the things where I say yes and things where now I just have to say no because I cannot fit everything into my schedule. And that's even on the social side. I don't feel obligated to say yes all the time. Now, at times I have to force myself to go out because, I know that I do get a certain amount of energy from connecting with friends and just being with people. That surprised a lot of people because I am out and public and I'm on stage leading events and things like that on stage. And I
Mhm.
have to have a lot of energy to do that. But it's not actually that comfortable for me being at events, like especially where I don't know people. That's something I have to push myself on all the time. And, as far as the balance, I tell people all the time, I just really don't believe in the concept of work life balance. I don't
Mhm.
think it really exists. And so by people thinking that it exists and that they don't have it, they feel like they're missing out on something. They feel like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have this work-life balance. I'm seeking work-life balance and I don't have it." And then that causes, them to feel some sort of way. I tend to focus on work life priorities that you have to
That's good.
prioritize whatever it is that is of importance at the time.
Mm.
I try to make all of our kids have played sports. And so, I have been at like almost every single game. Right now during practice season, I'm right now like for basketball, they're kind of doing some warm up kind of things. I try to go to those. If I can't, I can't. Um, Even to games, I do prioritize my schedule right now when it's basketball season or when the other guys were playing football and it was football season. Yep, do not ask me to do something on a Saturday. I was at a football game. Basketball,
Mm.
a lot more games, so it's a little tougher, but I have those things on my schedule and I do the best I can to work around those things, to work around the games and things that are on the schedule. Uh, I have been very clear with my kids, my husband, you need me to do something, you have a game or whatever it is, send me a calendar invitation. And that's like, I live and die by my calendar. So send me a calendar invitation. I can do my best to control my schedule, to schedule around whatever it is you need me to do. But if it's not on my calendar and now I've set up a bunch of meetings with clients and, different folks, my calendar's set and I'm not going to not uphold the responsibilities that I have to my work. That's just not how I operate. So, I think that that's something that, I want to share with folks as an insight. I think with as a mom, oftentimes we carry around, I should be doing everything for everyone. And I think that's very hard for us. And we have to learn again to prioritize. And when you're prioritizing and doing your work, do your work. And your kids get to see that example. They get to see how hard working you are. They learn that work ethic. They also learn that, hey, you know what? It's okay to be on your own sometimes. So, I would tell my kids, hey, I'm not going to be at the Halloween party where you're marching around in a circle and then you go inside. There's just no, is that important? And I would even talk to them about certain things, is it important for you for me to be there? No. Well, okay then. you know,
Okay.
where it's important to you, I will prioritize those things, and if it's not important to you, then, if I have a conflict or again, you just don't need me to be there, then that's fine, and I think, one of the challenges today is that there's so much pressure on parents to be at everything. I don't
Okay.
think that that's as healthy for the kids, right? Because they get used to not being independent, not being
Mm.
to do things on their own. And, I will say the proudest thing for me, like in sending my kids off to college, was knowing that they were well prepared to be on their own, that they were well prepared to be able to operate when I'm not there to, tell them what to do. They didn't need me to tell them what to do. I had guided them and, they knew how to function on their own.
Mm. Oh my gosh, that's so good on so many levels. When I hear you share this. One of the things that comes to mind, I guess there are a couple of things, and they're coming in layers, but the main thing being planning and priorities, like your ability to plan around priorities. But as you shared the points that you shared, underneath that, what I also heard was getting others involved in the process so you're not carrying the weight of that alone. Communication around other people's priorities and them understanding what you value and that they are not at the end of your to-dos or anything like that, but that you are considering them in this process as you are building, leading, living, and loving. But it also puts the onus on them to be able to clearly articulate their values to you, which I think is such a profound life skill, relationship building skill, self-serving skill in terms of just getting clear around what's important to you. And I think it's so beautiful that you exemplified this to your children through how you lead your life, but also, and they may not even realize it at the moment, for themselves, and getting them to recognize how to manage themselves, manage their calendar, yes, thinking about what's important so that they can manage their time. But then just the value of being able to say the things out loud is something that I don't know that many, I don't want to generalize, but I don't think that that is often an intentional consideration as you bring up young kids. I know that that's something that I talk about with my kids, but it is because of the fact that I have this business and I am building different things. So, like you, I've had to consider pockets of time. And when my kids come to me with a thing, it's not always, yeah, sure, we'll do that. No, it's not always a matter of every email that I get, every invitation you get, you'll be able to participate in. But what matters to you? Who are your actual friends? What activities do you truly want to be a part of and why? And I think that it's a beautiful development thing, but I also think that it can help nurture your relationships where they create intimacy and authenticity in the space to talk about the things that really matter as they grow, but starting from a young age.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that again, we oftentimes put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And if you ask the kids, they're kind of like, yeah, not a big deal.
No,
Like, "Oh, not a big deal." And then there are some things where they think it's not a big deal, and to me, it is a big deal because it
Mhm.
might the last time I get to see them do that thing, or like it's a one-time thing, and I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, "Well, no, I wanna see you do X, because I wanna have that memory," or, whatever it is. Or even, I was not there for my youngest son's first day of school this year. Now again, he's jumping in the car and driving himself, like, it's not a you know, it's not the same as it was 10 or 5 or something like that, but it's still, for me, kind of just a tradition kinda thing of the first day. Well, my husband did take the first day picture, so I had that, and I think in some of the things you do, helping everyone else around you to understand what is important for you to be part of for your own needs as a person, as a mom, and then understanding what's important from their perspective for you to be part of. And then other things again where it's a learning opportunity and experience on their part to have the freedom to be on their own. I will never forget when one of my kids, they were in the after school program. Um, I think it was maybe like first grade or something like that. And, again, two working parents, and they did the after school program. And I was, rushing there, racing to get there so he wouldn't be like the last one left or whatever. And I was, always kind of like just pushing the boundary there. And so I went to pick him up. I picked him up on that particular day, like early. And he was like, "Why are you here so early? I want to hang out, then, uh, I'm shooting basketball and everything." And he's having a great time. And on the one hand, at first I was kind of like, "Oh my gosh, I'm hurt." It's making it seem like you're going home to a bad, neglectful household, or you don't want to go home. And then on the other hand, it was like, just in the next instant, I was like, well, this is great. So now I don't have to feel guilty or bad about maximizing the time and my money. You know,
Yes. Okay.
here. And he's having fun. And that's what you want is for your kids to learn also how to not only be without you, but be on their own and enjoy the space that they are in.
Yes.
Right. And I think sometimes some of us can get a little twisted where we think we're doing it for them, but we're really doing
Mhm.
us because we want to feel that sense of being needed. And that sense
Mm,
of needed can actually, in the long run, be more harmful for the kids because at the
mm,
point when they need to be independent to make it in college or on their own, they then don't have that sense of independence.
mm.
And then it's tough. It's really tough.
I hear that, and I think that as you're also a mother of 4 boys, and I think that that adds an added level of consideration as boys who will eventually become men that perhaps will have their own families, and recognizing how to care for themselves as they go out into the world. And this probably sounds so bad, but not like relying on somebody else to do the things for them. You know what I mean? I have a question for you though. As you were saying that, it kind of brought something else up around what was this process like for you in terms of coming, like arriving to this point of being able to get everybody on the same page where the communication is open enough and you are clear enough in one, prioritizing your calendar and understanding how you manage it, but also getting everybody on board. Because you also mentioned that you communicated with your husband as well. Hey, if you want me to do a thing, send me a calendar invite. Because I think every home may have a process or not, but if not, this could be an opportunity to kind of give some tips around how that worked for you.
Yeah, and I will say I still don't necessarily know that I have everyone on the same page. Am still finding out about things late and like, well, when did you know about this? Now with the whole sports thing, a lot of times they are finding out at the last minute. So, that can be difficult. But again, it's just communicating. This is my process. Choose to follow it, but again, this is my process. And if you don't follow that, I may not be available to give a ride or to do whatever. Now, again, as they get more independent and, they're all driving or what have you, they don't need me as much to do that. But when I had to give a ride, go pick up or what have you, yeah, it needed to be on my calendar with my husband. And I do think that this is also important. It prioritizing the people in your life the same way that you would prioritize a client, right? So if my
That's
husband
good.
something on the calendar, um, we're gonna go in and do something, have a meeting, um, or not a meeting, but like a date night or something like that. I treat it like as a meeting. So I wouldn't cancel on a client. I'm not just gonna say, oh, well, honey, I scheduled something else. And that's, I think, the difference in prioritizing whatever it is you have on the calendar. And for me, I just don't have enough bandwidth mentally to try to remember all these things. So I have to have it on the calendar. But whatever is on my calendar, that is what I prioritize. So even if, my husband might invite me to something and I will actually do maybe because
Mhm.
I'm working through some things at work, so I'm not sure. So I don't want to commit and then, disappoint there. Or if I say yes, well, then I schedule work things or whatever it is around that particular commitment. So for me, that works. That might not work for everyone, but I do really believe in making the distinction between work life balance, which to me, I view that as a very stressful kind of pursuit of that
Mm,
versus work life priorities where I might be working a couple days straight where I have a grant proposal that's due and I am working on that up until the 11th hour of submitting it. In the moment, that is my priority, and I don't feel badly
mm,
about that, right? And then when I am with my family, doing things with the kids, I am prioritizing that. And I work a lot. I do work a lot. I'm on my phone a lot. I might even be at the basketball game, and if my son's not in at the time, yep, I might send a message or 2 or check. Look, it's what we have to do. And so I think that, the key message that I want to get out there is there is no particular mold. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. It is about what the right way is for you that enables you to get all the things done. You may choose to work late into the night. We might even be traveling even on vacation, and I will get up early and I'll check through email. For me, it's too stressful to be away, let's even say for 4 days, even if I was on vacation. It's too stressful for me to be away for 4 days and then come back to, 1,000 emails, and I'm not even joking, like, if I was away for 4 days not checking emails, there would be, like, 1,000 email backlog. That doesn't work for me. So I'd rather get up before everyone gets up, check some emails, respond a little bit, or just star things that I need to get back to. And then when I get back, I'm still able to be in that, more peaceful mode of coming off of a vacation rather than I'm just frantic. So yeah, I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to conform to someone else's social media version of how they live and have all of this balance, and then you feel all out of whack and you never know what's going on in their lives or accomplishing their goals or whatever. So, do what works for you.
Yes. And what I really love hearing as you're sharing this is the idea that with the priorities, you have built your relationships into the way that you schedule yourself first. The high impact, high value parts of your relationships are plugged in, and then you're able to build work around it. I love this part of the conversation so much because I believe that time management, as I was starting my entrepreneurial journey, like seriously, not when I was 13, but after having kids, was one of the hardest things for me to kind of get a grip on, and just recognizing, no, if you say yes to every opportunity, every learning engagement, every person that wants to pick your brain, every person that's just trying, you'll never have time for your family. You'll be so tired doing the work, and you may start getting a little bitter and resentful. Like that's what started happening with me. And so I started to take the approach that you're kind of suggesting, and just recognizing, well, if in an ideal situation, what would I want my time to look like? And what are the things that actually matter most? And I went from being what some people will consider booked and busy, which was what I thought I'd wanted at the beginning of the entrepreneurship journey. And I had it and I hated it. Like it was too much for me with the growing young family. And so the ability to bake time and the important relationships in the process made a difference not only in my ability to do the work, but then also feel fulfilled as I did it.
Missing
Mm.
out. I think that's the thing is to not feel like you're missing out on something.
Mm,
So if you feel like you're missing out on your family, your kids, what have you, prioritize that.
yeah.
Prioritize doing some of the things. The work will always be there. And that's why I say, I think that people feel like, well, the work life balance means I'm going to go to my kids' things and I'm not going to do any work. But then they're unhappy because the work isn't going well, right? The business isn't
Mm,
going well. Who said you have to not do anything? Again, you're taking your family on vacation. Maybe your kids are off doing something or they're playing, or again, maybe they're sleeping, right? There's nothing that says that you can't get some of your work done. So you're accomplishing all the things you want to do. And there's
mm,
nothing wrong with that. Do what works for you best,
mm,
not trying to
yeah.
live someone else's ideal of how you should work. And again, I think this concept of work life balance, while on the surface, it's a good one, to just maintain balance in everything.
Mhm,
Balance is good. But the notion, like the concept of work life balance, I think people are trying to pursue it in a way that becomes unhealthy or not
mhm,
even understanding that, yep, sometimes it's going to be really hard. Sometimes, as an entrepreneur, I don't even care if you didn't have kids, you're going to be tired. You're going
yeah.
to, as a who's not an entrepreneur, you're going to be tired. There are times when it's hard, period. It's hard.
Mm.
Understand that. And if it was easy, if it wasn't hard, everyone would be doing it. Be okay with that. And then build in your times, schedule in your times to take your pause, to go get your massage, go meet with a friend, go take a walk. Schedule all that kind of stuff in as well.
Mm. Oh man. As they're saying this, there are, I guess, three prongs that kind of like went off in my head. One of them being around the idea of this conversation as it relates to work-life balance. Sometimes I wonder if the conversation around work-life balance looks the same for men. The second prong that kind of went up was around this conversation as it relates to relationships, not only with your children, but in marriage and the idea of being married to an entrepreneur. I don't know if your husband's an entrepreneur, but how do you believe that entrepreneurship has impacted your relationship? The pros, the cons, the good, the bad, if you wouldn't mind answering, because I am the entrepreneurial one in my relationship. But my husband also has a couple of businesses, and it's so cool to see him do his things. Right now, he just harvested some honey for the first time. He became a beekeeper this year. It's very exciting for me. I'm like talking him up, and the honey is delicious, if I do say so myself. But what would you say are some? What has been your experience? How has entrepreneurship impacted your relationship? And what are some tips to just help those of us that are out here doing it? Please.
Well, I would say so yes, my husband is entrepreneurial and has had a mix of working in various capacities as an employee, but also having his own businesses in different forms, various times. And so I think the thing that's helpful is you get it and you understand, right? So when
Mhm.
he's on his grind and hustling for something, taking on a new client or raising money or something like that, you get when it's working through the night. And very early in our marriage, we had like almost like co-working sessions where we're kind of sitting alongside each other, you
That's
know,
it.
doing our own work, you know, that's the way of being together, versus
Mm.
a spouse who just has and I shouldn't say just because I don't want to minimize that, but, has where it might be 9 to 5 and they can leave their work at work and they don't have to think about anything else. And, their spouse is, over there grinding and trying to get things done into the wee hours of the morning. They're like, oh, honey, come to bed. What's going on? Why are you still working? That's just not helpful for someone who is not helpful. And so I think that the benefit is you get it and you understand. The hard thing is that there's also no one to kind of at times pump the brakes on that and to say, hey, you know what, we're both just sitting here doing this constantly. Let's go and do
Mhm.
something else. Let's go and, be away from this for the moment. Or, when you talk with each other, it's always talking about, hey, so I was gonna do this and hey, what do you think about this? And you're always talking about business because that's a person who you can bounce ideas off of. And
Mhm.
that's not always healthy. Sometimes talk about other things. Um, so, I think that there are definitely pros and cons, but the biggest pro is that um you get like the work. Now, I think
Mhm.
when you have two folks who are doing that, you do have to be mindful of the impact that that has on the kids potentially and you know who's showing up at the event, who's, you know, doing what and providing the guidance. I think that's where there can often be a little bit of a challenge and some friction because often it's assumed that the mom is going to do these things and pick up the slack and it's like, well, wait a minute, but I'm on my grind with my business too. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, the father, the male, the other person, the spouse in the relationship, kind of may not be prepared for that. because it never occurred to them, that there's the shared responsibility. It's not just kind of when you want to. It's funny, many, many years ago, early when we had kids, I will never forget a time that my husband came home. I think we just had our oldest son then. And, again, as a relatively new mom, you're trying to figure everything out. And IFEL is just getting off. Actually, I hadn't even started IFEL yet. I was like writing business plans during this time for .coms that were raising money. So I'm writing business plans on deadline all the time and dropping off at daycare, trying to figure out daycare, all the things. So you're always rushing around. And my husband came home and kind of disappeared for a while. And then I'm like, calling him or whatever, and he says, "Well, Jill, I just need to decompress for a little bit." Yeah. I went ballistic, ballistic. I was like, decompress. I was like, when do I get to decompress? Ever,
Mhm.
helping him to understand, this is now when he was working in a corporate job. And, it's like, oh, I'm going to get drinks with so and so after work, or I'm just going to stop by here after work, or I'm going to go to this happy hour after work. I'm like, well, wait a minute. So now you're cutting into the time that I would have to do my work because you're staying out and not being able to take on some childcare responsibilities later on when now I would shift gears and some work done. I said, so be mindful that that's what you're doing, right? It's not like
Mhm.
the stopping by somewhere for work that has an impact on me differently, right? And
Mhm.
again, I think it's open dialogue and conversation about those things as a woman, not harboring it, but like being very open about one, how you're feeling, but two, how whatever it is they're doing impacts you as well and potentially impacts the kids also. So yeah, I think that that's really important. Now I'm a little after you kind of learn to maneuver, and especially as you learn to function on your own with the kids. But you have one kid that's tough dealing with, then you have two. At a point when I had four, I was just so happy to be able to take everyone out and like go to the store. I mean, really, the first time I took all four kids out by myself, like when the youngest one was really like, that was a big deal to me. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Like,
You did it.
everyone all, by myself. But and my husband was traveling at the time, that was the thing. I
Okay.
almost Yeah, I felt like, I mean, I understand I was not a single mom, so there was not that same pressure, but I was doing everything and having to navigate everything by myself,
Mhm.
right? And that was almost frustrating because I felt like, wow, I'm married and I have a spouse. However, my
Mhm.
husband's not here to help with doing anything. So, yes, he was supportive, emotionally, all those good, great things. But in the moment, he wasn't there to help with any of those things. And I was still doing work. So,
Mm.
it's a challenge, but I think it's important to, again, be very honest and open with how you're feeling. Also, knowing when you need to, uh, reserve some resources to get the help that you need and be
Yes.
about that, get
Mhm.
the help. And when it's, look, yeah, I would love to make the home cooked meals. Well, not me, because I don't like to cook, but those folks who like love cooking and everything, yes, you might like to do the home cooked meals, but you know what? If that's causing you a lot of stress because you can't do everything, figure out another solution. You know,
Yes.
that's the thing is some of the things we have to just not put the pressure on ourselves to try to do everything. And that's again where there is the prioritization, you know,
Yeah.
what has meaning for you and your family and you within the context of the family. Because maybe, what works for your family or what they want may not always 100% be aligned with your needs. And
Yeah.
have again those honest conversations. There just should not be any judgment for yourself. Don't judge yourself about
Mm.
that you make. Never mind other people judging. The biggest judge that most of us have is ourselves.
Okay. I need to pause this right here because if you're listening to Jill and thinking to yourself, "Whew, I am doing a lot," or "I don't even know how to make space for myself as I'm showing up for others," Trust me, sis, you are not alone. And let this be your reminder that you don't have to keep doing it all alone. If you haven't taken it yet, go take the Work Life Joy quiz. It's a quick 3-minute assessment that helps you identify your number one joy blocker, that thing that's creeping up, taking up all your time, draining your energy, and clouding your mental space. Yeah, that. This quiz helps you identify what that thing might be, and it gives you a personalized plan to help you break free from it. I know, it probably sounds too good to be true, but hey, women in leadership and caregivers especially love this quiz because it tends to reveal what's happening beneath the surface, that part that you rarely slow down to examine. You can take the quiz right now at ericalasan.com/joyquiz. It's free, it's eye-opening, and honestly, it may be the first step in making space for the version of you that God is calling forward in this season. All right, let's get back into this conversation with Jill because we're just getting to the good stuff.
That's so good. I feel like if anybody's needed a permission slip to have the conversations, advocate for yourself, and create space, this is it. But as I hear you share this, there's almost like an underlying thing. And I mean, I lead things with a lens of joy, but it almost also sounds as though there is a conversation around one, being clear about the things that you do well and how to take off your plate the things that you don't. So even leading with joy in the home and how you do it, and making sure that that process feels good along the way as well. There might be someone who is hearing this and saying, all right, Miss Jill, that sounds nice, but we don't have conversations like that. And I could never actually tell my husband how I feel around what his schedule or his calendar is doing to mine or how I'm going through this day. Like, I just could never, but I always like to consider the vision of what's possible, the joy on the other side of doing the hard and scary things. What became possible for you, even after that particular instance where you needed to have a hard conversation? How did opening up that way with your husband around your experience as an entrepreneurial mom trying to grow a business and managing a family of 4 kids and also being in a happy marriage because it matters, how did that impact your relationship moving forward as you did the scary well, maybe it wasn't scary, I don't know. How did you feel about doing it, and what did it look like once it was done?
I'll say I did not necessarily grow up with examples of everyone having open, honest conversation. Um,
Mm,
and I'll just, I'll leave it there that I did not have a lot of role modeling about that. Um, but that's also what led me to work to be more open and honest and transparent with how I was feeling. Because I think that when you don't do that, you can have a lot of assumptions about why someone did whatever they did.
mhm,
My husband just doesn't care about whatever. Well, maybe it's just he just never actually thought about it. Maybe it
mm,
just never occurred to him about how it could be feeling. I said, look, my husband and I have been married 30, next year will be 30 years. Um,
yeah.
so it's, been a while. And I will say, not every single moment of all those 30 years has been happy. Every single moment. Like it's just, it is what it is. Um, we've had a lot of great moments together. We've worked through issues and challenges together. And I think my feeling is, and I have said this to him at different points. I said, if ever I get up and walk out of this relationship, it will not be any surprise. You will know exactly why because I would have told you time and time and time and time again. Now, whether you choose to listen and act
Mm,
on that information, that's a completely different story. But I never would want to reach that point and then it all comes out, oh, I'm upset about all these things. And the person says, oh my gosh, I never knew. And
mhm,
I had seen some relationships where that happened. Even I, talked to a friend Um, uh, this person said, I just never knew that the other person
Mhm.
was feeling this way all the time. And I think that's horrible. It's
Yeah.
horrible, right? Because you can't do anything about anything if you don't know that there's a problem and you don't know how that other person is feeling. So for me, that's just having a level of honesty that one means that you respect that person enough to be honest with them about whatever your issues are, and that you trust them enough to receive that information in the spirit in which you intended it, which is again being honest and transparent. Because if you don't love someone, you just don't have that care and concern, right? It's like it just
Mhm.
whatever, doesn't matter, right? If you truly love someone and you want the relationship to have every opportunity to be successful, and marriages fail for a lot of reasons that have nothing to do with do you love each other. So, my feeling is that and marriage too is really hard. It's really hard. And in this day and age, most marriages don't work out. And
Mm.
so if you want your marriage to even have an opportunity to be successful, and I don't know that we should even take it as being successful is staying married forever, right? Any stretch if you are married, 7, 10, 15, 30 years, that marriage has been successful and I'm sure has yielded some sort of fruit in some sort of way, right? And you've gotten a
Mhm.
benefit from it. But in order for that to happen, to me, I just don't see any other way. If you are just harboring all that in at some point, you're just going to burst and you're going to be frustrated and just having the conversations in your head. And I think that causes again stress, which is not helpful. So, yeah, and it's not always easy to say the truth, and you don't have to say the truth in a mean way, simply stating the facts. Hey, when you do this, this is how this makes me feel, and this is why, and I'm telling you this so that you will understand.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that and giving context to not only the what, but the how, and even sharing a little about what influenced your ability to open up to being honest, not only with your husband, but it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, also with yourself and just saying the things out loud. And a lot of the conversations that I have with women, I think sometimes that is the hardest part. And I know that in certain experiences when I kind of arrived at the same conclusion around, listen, it's not doing me any good to keep this in. My stomach is hurting. I'm not sleeping. Every time this thing happens, I get a pang in my chest. Like, that's not good. It's very ungood. But not only that, it's impacting my ability to have a true, genuine relationship with other people around me. And it's not just in marriage. I think that this conversation is also something that can be transferred to relationships in general. Friendships, relationships with your siblings, your parents, it doesn't matter. The need to be open and honest and transparent and vulnerable, embracing the power of vulnerability and recognizing that it's not selfish, it doesn't make you a bad person, but it actually has the ability to foster intimacy and deepen your relationship. And what I've also found, especially in doing the journey work, is that it creates the opportunity for the other person to learn how to do that for themselves. Because sometimes it may be that they also are feeling the feelings and they're just holding them in and harboring them and thugging through it when they really want the opportunity to have space held for them as well. Thank you for sharing that. Oh my goodness, I feel like I could talk to you forever. What brings you joy? How are you prioritizing joy for yourself in this season?
I am trying to work in more time for myself and some things that I want to do for myself. However, what I will say I do on a regular basis, which brings me joy, and sometimes it's very little things, is walking, listening to my playlist. I kind of have like my morning playlist to bring me up, and then I have my evening playlist to bring me down. So I think of it as almost like a
Mm,
soundtrack. So
that's good.
like a good life hack, and it's actually on this playlist, it's the same songs that always come up, but they still bring me up. Yeah, that's just my kids are like, "Oh my gosh, I listen to the same songs over and over and over." But again, that's why bring me up and, kind of ease me down at the end of the day. Um, and then oat milk chai lattes, my favorite. That is like a pick me up for me going into the office or when I'm traveling and then I land, I will head right to the coffee place, a local coffee place, and my assistant knows also, identify close to the hotel wherever I'm staying, what are some local coffee places. And my oat milk chai latte is just like my, oof, love that.
Oh, wow. Is that what you were sipping on when we came on to the call? Or was that coffee?
That was actually a latte
Oh.
made myself. However, the thing that brings me like the peace and the joy is a chai latte, is like my treat to myself. Small thing. I mean, now going out and, getting these things can are a little more pricey than they used to, but still the thing that brings me joy. So if I have a chai latte and I get in like some good walking, like that does bring me a lot of joy, little things.
Good to know. Oh, wink, wink. And it's really cool to know about the playlist. That is a definite hack. I have a playlist called JOYrney Jams that kind of do the same thing for me, but the idea of having the same one in the like to pick you up in the morning and the same one in the evening is nice because it almost I could assume creates an internal rhythm. And it's like, well, you know exactly what's coming next.
Exactly what it does, and it, like, starts signaling, to my body really, "Hey, it's time to get that energy to come up and get going with the day," and then it's time to, have a different energy to start bringing it down and wind down for the evening. So, yes, I'm very big on routine and trying to have
Mhm.
a routine that kind of works with just like the natural rhythms of your body or starts to get, your body into a sense where this feels like what you should be doing.
Ooh, life hacks on a journey to purpose. Okay, so maybe that wasn't so much of a lightning round question, and maybe this one is. I don't know. We'll see. But I feel very excited about this next question because this is a very unique opportunity in that you have seen and experienced so many different aspects of the work that I do. And you've also seen me through different seasons of this entrepreneurial journey, one of which being the fact that you've coached me, one of which being that you're here on the podcast, but you have also been a Journey to Purpose. Well, not you personally, but IFEL has also been a Journey to Purpose client, and you've experienced one of our signature workshops. I would love to hear what your experience was as a part of our vision party.
Yeah, I thought that the vision party was one was fun because it was social. So, folks are doing it together. But I thought that it was just interesting how you took people through the visioning process. And
Mm,
again, just got people thinking about what brings them joy and then giving them the tools, literally, like giving everyone the tools to make that vision visual for them,
mm.
something that you could, keep in front of you. So I thought it was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Do you still use your vision? Or how was the vision that you came up with? I'm always so curious about this. Like a year later, 2 later, I'm always curious about where people are with their vision and how effective it was.
I will say because I was walking the line between experiencing it, but also making sure that everyone else there, I was sort of there more interested in making sure that everyone was getting a lot out of it and that they were getting the things that they needed. I didn't focus so much on my board, which at future, I will definitely do. But again, I saw other folks walking away with boards that were very complete, where it really allowed them to take what was in their head and get it down on a visual board in front of them. And I think that that's really important. I mean, I do think it's something that people should do, at least once a year.
Thank you. Oh, that's so cool. I feel like I've never gotten to ask that question in this type of scenario. So I'm really excited because I will also say that your coaching allowed me to even get to the point where the idea of working with organizations was on my radar. And again, I want to thank you for holding space for me to like go through all the stuff that I was going through in order to get to that point. But then also being someone who championed the work and I want to say put action behind the words that you also gave me. So thank you. It really blessed me and I'm so grateful.
Excellent.
All right. So this last and final question is just almost like a general, what is one thing that you just wish someone would have told you as you started out this journey to purpose? And entrepreneurship journey, like what is one thing that you wish someone would have told you about motherhood, marriage, having a business, and just building a life that you love to live? I know that's a big loaded question. Maybe you
It
said other.
it is a lot of question, and, I don't know that there's one thing for all of those, but I would say probably if anything, and this is again one thing I said earlier that my oldest son always says, is enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. So it's gonna be hard at different stages, being an entrepreneur, being a mom, being a wife, whatever again, as I said earlier, whatever is worth doing is going to be hard. Whatever you're doing at which you're going to be successful or you want to be successful, it's going to be hard, which is like the definition of success, right? You're reaching a level where others have not. Otherwise, everyone would be doing it. But with it being hard, enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, document that. Unfortunately, now also, we're seeing such an increase in dementia, and we can't take memory for granted. So documenting what's going on in your life at every single stage, even things that seem like, this is minor, this is nothing, document that so that, when you move on to another stage in your life, you do have something to look back and reflect, even if you are not naturally remembering those things, you have the ability to look back and really absorb the fact that I had a good life. Whatever that life was, I had a good life. I did these things that brought me joy. And even the things that may not bring you joy in the moment, when you look back on them, you have fond memories. So I would say, I would tell myself now to document more. Again, just pictures, things like that, even how you're feeling about different things at different times. Enjoy every stage of it and document.
That's beautiful. Oh man, Jill, on that note, this has been such an enriching and enlivening conversation. I feel like I could talk to you forever. I kind of did this evening, but I just, again, want to thank you for being so gracious with your time. I am honored to know you. I admire you, and I am just so grateful to have you as a part of my Vibe Tribe. So thank you. And before you leave, I want to know where can the people connect with you and Eiffel? How can the Journey listeners keep in touch and learn more about the work that you're doing? Oh,
Yeah, so connect with me on LinkedIn for sure. I'm a LinkedIn junkie, so love to connect there. I am responsive on LinkedIn as well if folks, send me messages there. And go to our website. We are Eiffel, WEARE, as in Fred, EL.org. We are Eiffel.org. And we have lots of resources there. We have also links to our different programs for entrepreneurs, programs for business professionals who may be interested in volunteering their expertise in support of a business owner, and people who may be interested in learning about angel investing. We really have
mm,
created a microcosm of the full entrepreneurial ecosystem under the Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership. So we have opportunities for people to get involved in a myriad of different ways. And we welcome folks to get involved.
Yes, you've heard it here. Thank you again, Jill. You guys that are listening, make sure you follow IFEL online, on socials, and follow Jill's journey, because trust me, if you enjoyed the nuggets that were dropped here today, you can get a whole lot more.
Woo, family, what a conversation, right? Jill's life is such a beautiful and wonderful example of what it looks like to lead with intention, serve with purpose, and stay rooted and grounded in something bigger than yourself as you show up in service to others. If this conversation blessed you, encouraged you, or expanded the way you think about any part of your journey, I would love to hear from you. What part of Jill's story spoke to your heart the most? Was it her leadership story, her motherhood insights, or her honesty about the weight of trying to build something meaningful? Share your reflections with me. You can DM me, tag me at Erica Lasan on all social platforms, or you can drop your thoughts in the comments or reviews. Your feedback helps other women find this show. But not only that, it's helping us grow and build our community of women who aren't just out here grinding, but growing in joy. And friend, if you know a woman who is building something amazing, whether it's a business, a family, a mission, or a part of her legacy, please share this episode with her. She needs this conversation. Until next time, keep living, leading, and loving with joy. And remember, we're on the journey together, one feel-good thing at a time. Bye. Thanks for tuning into another episode of the Journey to Purpose podcast. If you're ready to take what you learned today and put it into action, then friend, you might just be ready to take a joy quest. My step-by-step experience that is designed to help you reclaim your time, rest, and your peace without the guilt. Head over to ericalasan.com/joy-quest, or you can visit the link in the show notes to start your journey today. And remember, we're on the journey together, one feel-good thing at a time. Bye.